Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is Wildcat Parsons coming at you with Simply Smackdown. That's right, we're back to talk about that show on Friday night that they like to call the house that AJ Styles built. He likes to say it is for sure, and he's defending the IC title tonight. Actually, there's a lot of matches on the card tonight, and it was a solid show. So let's just dive right into this, which they didn't. It was kind of weird. We got a promo package for all the performers and for like the matches that we were going to get for the night. Yeah, I'm torn as to whether I like this or not, because they didn't talk about every match. Like, I think Lacey and Naomi didn't get talked about, but all the other ones, they had the performers that were in there actually hyping the matches that they were going to have later on. It's something new. WWE really doesn't do new often, so I will give it a chance. Then it goes directly into a Firefly Funhouse segment, and by goodness, watch it. I mean, honestly, watch it. Bray Wyatt goes from goofy to absolutely, like, scary serious so quick it's unfair. He might be the best character actor that we've seen in the history of professional wrestling. And that's just what it is. If there's anybody else better, or you can think of somebody else better, let me know in the comments down below, please. Gist of the show is that the Fiend is coming. The Fiend is awake, and he wants the belt back. So Braun should be concerned. More from Bray and the Fiend later on in the show, but we'll get to that when it happens. And the first wrestling match of the event happens, and it is Grand Metalik versus your Intercontinental Champion, AJ Styles. These are two ridiculously great athletes. Grand Metalik is becoming more of a name because of the Lucha House Party and the stuff that they're capable of doing, and AJ Styles is just AJ Styles. And I like that they put the Intercontinental Championship on him, because it's known as that, like, workhorse championship belt. Like, the person you put on it's like the backbone of the company that you can rely on match in, match out, and AJ Styles is definitely that for SmackDown and WWE right now. But I was really excited when this was announced, because I knew how good it was going to be in the ring, and it really didn't disappoint. They even played their characters very well in the course of the match. AJ was that arrogant, I know I am this good, so I'm going to slowly, methodically tear my opponent apart. And it made sense, because Grand Metalik's known to be a high flyer, and so he kept him grounded. He took away the best part of his offense. So really the story that was told was, you know, the savvy veteran doing what it takes to win a match, and let's see if, you know, it's like when you're playing against a basketball player who likes to go to his right. The coach will tell you, let's see if he can play left-handed. That's what AJ was doing. He was seeing if Grand Metalik could play left-handed. And he did a really good job of it. There were a good amount of counters. Then, of course, Grand Metalik built up some momentum, and that's when the match really turned around. Of course, AJ took a couple of shortcuts here and there because he's a heel, and that's what we expect heels to do. But really the end of the match was because Grand Metalik made a mistake that AJ took advantage of. Metalik comes off the top rope, AJ hits him with the shoulder in the gut. That looked brutal, and Styles had been working the leg of Metalik the entire match. Comes back, he wins with a calf crusher submission. Of course, AJ, afterward, because he's a heel, he beat up the other member of Lucha House Party to send a message to the rest of the locker room. It's like, look, I'm the IC champion, I'm in charge, get over it. This match was a solid A- to start the show. It was a little slower than what you would typically see for a match to start the show, but you can get away with more of a technical more of a psychological, more of a storytelling match with the empty arena, because you don't have to get the crowd hot. You know, you can actually step into something that's just going to be a really good match because you don't have to worry about the energy of the live audience. And I like that they did that there. Then we go to Baron Corbin talking to Gable. That's what I'm going to call him. I refuse to use that stupid nickname for him. Backstage. And he's offering him a chance at the King's Ransom to get him to beat up Matt Riddle for him. So he looked kind of intrigued. We'll see where that goes. Then we move on to see highlights of Jeff Hardy and Sheamus's bar fight from last week. Okay, we get a tease for a face-painted Jeff Hardy character in the ending of that match. So, I mean, if we're still going to do this, let's see where it's going, which perfectly leads into, of course, Jeff Hardy doing a promo in the ring. And, you know, if we're going to do this storyline, at least we got this, where Jeff really took time to talk about the things that have got him past his addictions. He talked about love of family, love of his job. Just, you know, it was really good to actually have that moment where he got to speak his piece in it. And if we're going to do the storyline, I'm glad we finally got to this point. But of course, Baron Corbin interrupts. And then Drew Gulak interrupts Baron Corbin and attacks him from behind. And that's how we start the match between Drew Gulak and Baron Corbin. And to be fair, I'm a big Drew Gulak fan. I love his work in the ring. He's a great technician. Needs a little bit of character work there. I mean, he's basically being booked right now as Daniel Bryan's wrestling coach. And I don't know, I think we need a little more than that. But I was a little worried about this match because I'm not sure about Baron Corbin working with people not his own size. Like, some of the bigger guys struggle with that, especially if they're not great technicians on their own, and Corbin can be a little stiff in the ring at times, but it was better than I expected. They actually did a really good job of telling the story of the technician who's trying to grab arms and legs and submit Baron Corbin and keep him grounded. And Corbin was using his size and his strength and his, you know, bare knuckle boxing ability to create separation and get himself back in the advantage. And, you know, Matt Riddle comes out, Baron Corbin gets distracted, Drew Gulak tries to get a pin, but Baron Corbin still hits End of Days and still gets the win, even with the Matt Riddle distraction. Then Matt Riddle comes out and starts beating up Baron Corbin, and then Gable comes out and beats up Matt Riddle, and we get Gable and Corbin walking up the ramp together doing this little sign saying, you know, I think Gable's going to take the money. It got way chaotic after the end, as part of the ending, but that aside, I'd probably give it a C+. It was one of Corbin's best efforts that I've seen in a long time. So kudos to you, who I don't always say nice things about. And then we move on to something that they talked about last week that I've been really looking forward to for a while. And Big E, because of injuries to the other two members of the New Day, is going to start his single run. His run as a singles competitor, and it appears that it starts versus The Miz, who's of course accompanied by John Morrison. Both are really solid in-ring workers. Miz he's good, he's not fantastic. Big E, we've seen him do a lot of good work as a tag team wrestler. Now this is one of our first real chances to see how he's going to work as a singles competitor. It seemed a little off early to me. Maybe they were both just trying to find their footing. And of course, it started with Big E doing all of his goofy New Day stuff. You know, all the hip dancing and smacking Miz on the butt and that kind of stuff. But eventually Big E turned serious, and it slowly improved as a match from that point on. But even the announcers were like, this is what's going to get him in trouble, being goofy, silly. He's got to actually take this seriously. And they were really trying to be like, well, I don't know if his cardio is going to hold up because he's used to having another person out there. Like, they were really putting over the idea that this is his first ever singles match, even though we've seen them before. There was lots of Morrison interference that kept, every time Big E would get some momentum, Morrison would jump in and do something like kick him in the head or some craziness. And Morrison eventually got tossed by the ageless Charles Robinson. I mean, the man looks the same as when I was seeing him in old school WCW. When he was Little Nature Boy. Yeah, check that out. That was a long time ago. And Big E eventually got the submission victory. So far, we've had 2 submission victories and 1 pinfall on a SmackDown. Usually this is, roll up, extraction, roll up. But we've had actual defined winners, and I'm really impressed by this. So good job so far, SmackDown. Then we get Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura backstage with champagne celebrating their tag team championship, and loved it. I'm really happy for these guys to finally get some shine, finally have an opportunity to show the talent that they have, and be rewarded a little bit for all the hard work they put in through the years, besides just being ridiculously good performers in their own right. Apparently Lucha House Party invites themselves to this championship celebration. They apparently asked for a title shot, and they sing. So we probably know who the next competitors are for the belt. We'll see where this story goes. If it's Lucha House Party versus these 2 for the belts, that match will be fire. Then Sheamus talks about how it was a handicap match with Jeff Hardy because he fought him in a bar. And it was just a really weird promo where Sheamus put himself over. I guess we're still going to be doing this storyline. Okay. Then we get Lacey Evans versus Naomi. We got this last week. Lacey Evans won, and there was a whole Twitter hashtag thing that happened, and they talked about it ad nauseum during this match. But Lacey played the heel, and it was physical, and she was just nasty at times. She would tie Naomi's hair up and stuff, get it caught in stuff, and try to create opportunities to just win how she could. And every bit of momentum that Naomi would get would immediately get shut down by Lacey doing something either brutal or shortcut-ish or whatever. Naomi wins after a version of a roll-up, but I'll allow it since it hasn't been overused the entire night. She hits a backslide for the win over Lacey, and like I said, there was a lot of talk about the hashtag Naomi deserves better. Yeah, she's a really good athlete. She's a solid women's performer. WWE seems to have stop and go stories with her. They start to push her and then change their minds. Let's see if they keep it up on this one. Let's, see if this one stays the course. I'm interested. It was a solid C for that match. It did a good job, but it seemed like the ending, you knew as soon as they talked about the hashtag so much. And, I like having a little suspense in my wrestling. And, we get a promo backstage where Otis and Mandy Rose are talking about a date they're about to go on. And Otis leaves to go start getting ready, I guess. And Sonya attacks Mandy Rose from behind, beats the absolute mess out of her, stomps her face into the ground. She's got blood on her face, and grabs scissors, cuts a chunk of her hair off, and she grabs some clippers, and she's getting ready. We all know to shave the head, probably. saying she's going to make Mandy as ugly on the outside as she is on the inside. Straight up psycho stuff. And of course, she gets interrupted at this point by some backstage officials. Where it's a weird, like, I don't know, it's just, you know how WWE always has to have their one segment where you're like, what in the world were you thinking? Well, this was it for this show. So she's sitting on the floor bleeding, and there's medics and everybody looking at her. Lady goes back to do an interview, and Miz and Morrison come up and start making a series of just terrible jokes. And I'm sure Vince is probably sitting in the back going, this is the best segment ever. And I'm just like rolling my eyes going, you almost made it all the way through a show where I didn't have a lot to critique. And then you do this. Come on, it was so solid to this point. Of course, Miz and Morrison are fun when they're goofy at times, but this just seemed a little too out of place. Bleeding girl on floor, two guys cutting jokes. After Miz lost the match earlier in the night, you figure they'd be a little madder about that, but who knows, WWE. Which leads us to the main event. It's SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley versus Nikki Cross for only the 2,436th time in the past month. So, there's that. And to be fair, in this series, there have been some really, really good matches. The problem is this one wasn't one of them. It went to the well a few too many times, I believe. Nikki Cross. We got brutal, angry, frustrated Nikki Cross, and the more unorthodox her strikes were, the more it seemed that Bayley was struggling with the match. And I haven't seen that in a long time, where it seemed like Bayley seemed to fail to work well with the competitor. Once Bayley took control of it later, it smoothed out and it became a much better match. Nikki held her own, but honestly, and this is the problem that I've always had with this feud, is it never felt like Nikki was a viable threat for the championship. It's always felt that this feud was about Bayley and Sasha Banks to see when we're going to have that blow up that leads to their match for the SmackDown Championship. Now I know Sasha has the Raw one, but she's probably about to lose that back as part of the storyline. And, you know, it just seems like poor Nikki and Alexa are pawns in somebody else's story, which happens in a big way after Bayley wins to hold on to her championship belt. I give it a C. It started awkward. It picked up and got better as it went. But like I said, it just felt there was never any suspense. You know, like they did a bunch of false finishes, but you never actually thought that Nikki could win, and it took away from it. Then afterwards, Alexa's trying to console Nikki, and Nikki's having none of it. She shoves Alexa and walks out, and the lights go down, and the Fiend comes out. He's circling Alexa Bliss. And if you didn't see the swamp fight, you're kind of wondering what the heck's going on. But Alexa Bliss played Sister Abigail to mess with Braun in some part of the storyline for that swamp fight that they had. So the Fiend comes out, and you know, that's how all this fits together. Besides Braun and Alexa being tag team partners in that mixed tag championship we had a long time ago. So, you know, all this kind of meshes in and makes sense. The Fiend comes out, he stalks around Alexa, and she's sitting there selling that she's scared to death because she probably saw the mask for real for the first time, and I would be scared to death. Let's be real here. And it ends up turning into like the most slow, suspenseful mandible claw ever that gets applied to Alexa Bliss. And as that's happening, the lights go out and the show ends. So there we have it. Overall, one of the better SmackDowns I've seen in recent weeks. There's only the one segment that I was like, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? This makes no sense. I mean, not all the matches were great, but none of them were terrible. There's not any moments where I'm just like, oh, why are you in the ring? Why are you doing this? I don't want to see this. You know, it started with AJ and Grand Metalik and ended with, it wasn't their best one, but there's been so much else to compare it to. It probably suffered a little bit in my rating because of that. But overall, a C+ show. I mean, really good for what I expected, to be honest. Anyway, guys, and I said it earlier in the show, if you can think of a better character actor in the history of professional wrestling than Bray Wyatt, please let me know down in the comments, because I'm struggling to come up with one, and I've been a fan for a long time. Anyway, please like, subscribe, like I said, leave a comment for me. Anyway, thank you guys. God bless.